If you want to create a rose garden, or even just to incorporate roses into your garden design, you need to know what kind of roses you need for, say, obelisks, arches, fences, walls, or incorporating into a herbaceous border. It's Alexandra here from the Middle-Sized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and I went to Peter Beales Classic Roses in Norfolk, where they have a 2-acre rose garden, which is open to the public all year round for free, to talk to their nursery manager, Ian Limmer. Ian has been growing roses for 46 years, so I asked him what roses we need for arches, obelisks, fences and walls, and also some key questions about what we do about black spot, how to plant a rose and how to replant roses. Firstly, I've got an obelisk in my garden, and the rose that I have planted for it appears to be completely unrelated to it. I realise I've chosen the wrong shape of rose for this obelisk. So if somebody was thinking about having an obelisk, what would you say to them about choosing roses?
Well, first of all, you want to decide where it's going to go within the garden. If it's a small garden, is it going to be a small obelisk? Then you can choose some smaller shrub roses, and shrub roses make themselves perfect for going into obelisks. So we're looking maybe at 5 foot, something like that. You know, if you've got obelisks like we've got in the gardens here that are 8 foot tall, you know, then you can use some of the small patio climbers or ramblers, and they're very good and useful. And we're all looking for repeat flowering as much as possible, but do bear in mind, the more you want something to repeat or continuous flower, the more you've got to look after it, the more you've got to feed it. You know, you've got to work at it. But it's just thinking of the aspect where it's going to go, the height of the obelisk and so on.
And when it comes to an arch, a rose arch, what do you have to remember then?
You can use climbers and ramblers. Generally, how I tend to explain the differences between climbers and ramblers, and I say generally the ramblers have clusters of smaller flowers, you know, maybe 20, 30 flowers on the end of each stem, and generally they don't repeat flower, although we are getting more and more repeat flowering ramblers. So they give you the wow factor for that shorter period of time. Climbers generally tend to have larger flowers and 3 flowers on the end of a stem. So there's always, you know, there's things that are going on there, but it doesn't give you that wow impact like we've got, you know, on an arch beside us here. And it's also, again, using other plants. So we must remember, you know, you don't these days tend to plant a rose garden just with roses. You have a herbaceous border, so you add other climbing perennials and clematis and things like that to mix in with your roses.
Lovely. And so what you're saying is really that the rambling rose is often a better choice for an arch.
With climbers, they will always want to grow up. So therefore, the top of the arch is, you know, is semicircle like that, but the climbers will just go up there like that, whereas ramblers will give you that sort of dreamy look where they cascade down and you're walking through a lovely arch like that. So I'm a great fan of ramblers, more so than climbers.
What about when the arches, you've got a longer arch wall here at the Peter Beales garden.
Yep.
Is there anything different? Is one arch the same as, say, 6 arches, or is it different if you're going to have a long corridor that people are going to walk down?
I've been working with roses now for 45, 46 years. I'm learning all the time. You never know it all. But what we have found here, as you walk through the corridor of our pergola behind me, you'll see there's gaps in the top of the roof, so to speak. What we do is we train 3 or 4 stems on each pole, and then sometimes we'll cut the whole window out, because we're all guilty, and I've been doing this for many years. That's a lovely shoot. I'll tie that on in the winter. I'll tie that one in. And when it comes to the summer, if you look there, the grass is lovely, isn't it, underneath that pergola? That's because it's getting the sunlight through there. If you tie everything in, then it becomes dark and you lose your grass. But you can, you know, if you've got a long pergola, you can use some shrub roses. Put an odd shrub rose in there, and they will climb, and they'll maybe go up to about 5 feet. But then you leave the next pole for a little bit more vigorous one. If you're having a pergola and it's, say, 8 poles or something, I'm very keen to have the same either side for the very first one. That invites you into the tunnel, and it gives you that balanced look. Once you've got past that first one, then you can alternate and do whatever you like. But if it's, you know, a visual from the house and you just see this lovely mass of flowers and so on.
And when we come to roses for, say, the front of a house, maybe you're going to take them over the door, what would you have to think about then?
Two or three things really. You want to think about the size of the rose. It could be a cottage, could be a bungalow, could be a 3-story house. How much do you want to cover the house wall? Do you want it to cover up to the 2nd story? Do you want to do over the arch and just over the front door and just frame it? And when you are putting up a rose on a wall, it's good to get your wires in first. So as it grows, then you can put support the rose onto the wires and then train them horizontally as it goes up and around. But the important thing is also to think: is it a south-facing wall? Is it going to be too hot for too many hours during the day? Is it a north-facing wall? What will take it a north-facing wall? There are still several roses that are happy to grow on a north-facing wall.
And so generally, would you say that climbers or ramblers?
Climbers, I think, would be better. You can have both. It's not a problem. And you've got 2 roses either side of the door, because one rose will go up and then it won't go down. If you wanted to have a tunnel effect, you need 2 roses either side. And generally, we say have the same rose either side. But there's no rule. Some people might say, "I'll have a pink and a yellow," or whatever, pink and a white either side. But really what tends to happen is you always get a good year on the pink, and then sometimes there'll be a good year on the white, and you end up thinking, "Oh, I wish I'd have had the same," because you always end up comparing.
Are there any considerations like that for roses over a fence?
Fences can be anything from 3 feet up to 5 foot or 6 foot, something like that. But you can use ground cover roses, for fences, so they can be small climbers, so to speak. So that's a good tip. You can use ramblers. Climbers wouldn't necessarily work. Let's assume you've got a fence that's 50 foot long or something like that. You could easily have about 6 or 7, plant a rambler every 10 feet, and then that would end up joining together, and you can keep ramblers down. But climbers really is a no-no, because they do that. They go upwards.
And you've mentioned growing plants with roses, and of course I remember the rose gardens of my childhood where rose beds were roses in neat rows.
That's
and there
right.
was nothing else there. And but now you're saying actually the sort is go, pile in the other plants.
That's right.
Are there any plants that are particularly good to grow with roses?
There are so many perennials out there. We have got grasses, we've got lupins, we've got in the spring we've got daffodils, we've got tulips, we've got everything. It's just a matter of doing your homework first, looking, is it a front border? Is it in the middle of the border? And choosing a plant that goes 2 foot tall. In the middle of the border, you might want it 3 to 4 foot. Back of the border, you might want a bigger shrub rose and so on. But we have got all sorts of things. We've got grasses, we've got irises, we've got geraniums and so on. It really is like a cottage effect that we tend to say now. You're exactly right. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, that was how roses were perceived. We were here late 70s, early 80s, and this was just purely a rose garden with nothing else in it. Now it's a garden with herbaceous, daffodils. The garden looks superb from April through until October, November, because we're using other plants as well. If we just use roses, generally it was only good for about 5 weeks. Then what you've got to remember, you see something in a garden centre, read what it says, because you can put it in there and you think, "Oh, it's lovely, that'll fit in that hole." And then suddenly, 5 years later down the line, 3 years later down the line, it's 8 foot tall and it's in the middle and it's blocking off things. So it is very important to get the help and advice, do your homework, look at the label, because these days we all have instructions on the label. If it says 8 feet, it's going to be roughly about 8 feet. It might be 9 or 10 feet. It's very important, I think, that in a herbaceous border or any other border, even if it's an island border like we've got beside us here, get some height into it. Have an obelisk. Have an arch joining from one bed to another bed. It gives you interest in a garden. And that would be a huge difference to the feel of the garden.
With roses near a bench or near a seating area, what would you think of? Because firstly, you probably want the scent, but secondly, you wouldn't want people to get too scratched or to be... Is there issues around there?
Yeah, we've got we have a lot of people saying that, they've just got had a little baby and a little child, and I don't want a rose, can you supply us a rose, without thorns? Well, yes, we can. There are 1 or 2. There are maybe a handful, maybe 10. But then you've taken away 850 other varieties that we do. So you're really restricting it. I grew up as a child with roses, and so did you, and they have thorns. If you fall in it, you do learn. If you're going to have roses and you're a little bit worried about the thorns, what you could do is to, where the bench is, plant the 2 or 3 roses a little bit further and then have something, a perennial. So as you're sitting there, you've got the visual of the perennial, but you've also got the visual of the rose, but it's away from your elbow.
One of the things, and we were talking about this earlier, but I think we need to go over it, is the question of black spot, because I was saying that actually I don't take any notice of black spot. I just try and feed my roses, and you rather fortunately told me that was roughly the right approach.
It is.
So tell me more.
Yeah, I'm afraid what's happening these days now, people think, you're living in a perfect world where there are roses, and plants, everything that don't have anything wrong with them. Roses do have a bit of black spot, and we've got to get over that. It's not, okay, it's got a little bit of black spot on the leaves, it's not going to kill the plant. What happens is that your first flush is always good. So therefore, as we're looking around the gardens now, you won't see much black spot at all. And once they finish flowering, you deadhead and you want them to flower again. That's when they start suffering, because people don't add that extra feed, during the summer months. Like I said, when we were planting, you add the feed then, but that's just for planting. You need to feed in the spring, slow release fertilizer, which takes about 5 or 6 weeks to go down. So if you put that down around February, March time, the next time you put some slow release fertilizer down is when you're deadheading and tidying up. Then you want some more fertilizer, but do bear in mind that's going to take 5 or 6 weeks to go down. Then you want to start thinking about, tomato feed. Liquid feed is very good. You can get Maxicrop with added iron, anything, to give the flowers and the roots a boost and keep them moist. Roses love water. You cannot overwater a rose. I'd much rather say set up a better feeding program than I would saying it's got black spot, get something off the shelf and spray it. We're trying to, avoid that. It is so much more important to try and keep the rose healthy, and then it will respond better, but it will get a little bit of black spot.
And so, in fact, the black spot is not going to ultimately harm the rose.
No, it's not. You mustn't put a rose where a rose has been before, okay? The lifespan of a rose, as I said, was anything between 20 years up to 80 years, and they take a lot of good trace elements out of the soil. So if you then buy a new fresh plant, put it in, within about 3 or 4 years, it's going to suffer as well. So what you really need to do is to get a cardboard box like that over a cardboard box that holds 12 bottles of wine. If we can relate to that sort of size, enjoy the wine and then use the cardboard box. Dig the soil out. It's a wheelbarrow full. So to dispose of that in another part of the garden, it's not going to poison the soil. It's just had the trace elements taken out for the rose. Put the cardboard box in there, fill it with good fresh soil from another part of the garden or an allotment, and then plant it up. That rose will last you a long time because you've then just changed all the soil. And then planting them right. So where the graft is, that just needs to be about an inch below the soil. If it's too high up, that'll just one wave around and it doesn't settle in so well.
And when you're digging the hole to plant it, are you digging it the size of the roots, or are you digging it much bigger?
When we're planting bare root roses, especially, what I tend to say is about a spade's width, spade's depth, and then that's fine. Fork over the bottom so it's not hitting a barrier and compacting. You can go a little bit bigger. What you don't want to do is to dig a hole like a V, and because you get the compaction either side. Give it the feed that it wants. Yes, you can use Mycorrhizal, the friendly fungi, and put it on the root structure, and that was it. Maybe a little fertilizer around the top, or you do the old-fashioned method where you use slow-release fertilizer. And I tend to use, rather than say grams, you need so many grams, I say a good handful at the bottom of the hole. Mix that up, a good handful on the pile of soil that you've taken out of the hole, and when you mix that up, firm it well in, and then finally the sprinkling round the top, so you've got it bottom, middle and top, and that really will set the rose off to a good start.
To see another brilliant rose garden and to find out the answers to more other top rose growing questions, then don't miss this video coming up next with Neil Miller, head gardener of Hever Castle, where they have some stunning rose gardens. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.